All right, class. So, have you ever really stopped to think about this? How does a university teach academic English to students from, I don't know, dozens of different majors, all at the same time, in the same room? Well, today we're going to deconstruct a fascinating study that tackles that exact challenge. This is a really core problem in applied linguistics.
Okay, so to really get a sense of the scale here, let's rewind the clock to the turn of the 21st century. We're talking about a time when more than 1 million students were studying abroad. And get this, the vast majority of them came from non-English speaking backgrounds. I mean, that is a huge number of bright minds all trying to navigate not just a new language, but a whole new academic culture all at once.
So, as you can imagine, this created an absolute explosion in demand for what we in the field call EAP, or English for Academic Purposes courses. But, and this is the big thing, it also posed a massive question for educators. I mean, if you've got students from every major under the sun, all packed into one room, what's the best way to actually prepare all of them for academic success? How do you even do that?
Okay, so to get some answers, we're going to break down a really key study from 2001 by Leonage and Birch. Here's our game plan. We'll look at the problem, the two main ways of teaching this stuff, the actual experiment they ran, what the data showed, and then, the big lessons for us as future teachers.
All right, first up, we really need to get a crystal clear picture of the fundamental problem these researchers were trying to solve. And believe me, this isn't just a theoretical thing. It's a very real, practical challenge that EAP teachers face every single day. So, picture this. In a lot of countries, you might have an English class that's just for engineering students, right? Makes sense. But in most English-speaking countries, think Australia, the UK, the US, that's not the reality. The reality is a total mix of disciplines in one classroom. You've got a future accountant sitting right next to a future biologist. And that situation pretty much forces teachers into a one-size-fits-all approach, which, as you can guess, is a massive teaching challenge.
Right, so this very challenge, this mixed-bag classroom, it basically gave rise to two competing philosophies on how to teach academic English.
Okay, so on the one hand, you have what's called EGAP, or English for General Academic Purposes. You can think of this as the general study skills approach. Then, on the other hand, you have ESAP, English for Specific Academic Purposes, which tries to connect the language skills directly to a student's major. Now, because those mixed classes are so common, the general EGAP approach often wins out just because it's easier. But that leaves us with the million-dollar question. Is it actually effective?
Now, to really get the theory here, you've got to understand that EAP isn't just about teaching someone how to, order a coffee. It's not about basic conversational fluency. The real goal is to build something way more complex, cognitive academic language proficiency, or CALP. This is that sophisticated, abstract language you need to analyze, to argue, to write a critical essay at a university level. It's a much, much higher bar to clear.
And this quote right here, from Robinson, it just hits the nail on the head. A skill has to be mastered. It cannot simply be explained, but must also be extensively practiced. I mean, that's it, right? Developing that high-level academic language takes tons of practice. So how on earth can one short, generic course provide the specific practice that an engineering student and a history student both actually need? It seems almost impossible, doesn't it?
Okay, so this is where our researchers, Leonage and Birch, enter the picture. They basically said, enough with the theories, let's actually test this. And they designed this really simple but honestly elegant experiment to put these two approaches, the general versus the specific, to a direct head-to-head test.
Now, I want you to pay close attention to the methodology here, because it's a really fantastic example of educational research in action. What they did was they took two very similar groups of international students, and these students were studying everything from commerce to environmental planning, and they randomly put them into one of two different EAP classes.
So the first group, this was the comparison group, the control group, and they got the standard treatment, a traditional general EAP curriculum. The focus was entirely on general skills, totally disconnected from what the students were actually studying in their degree programs.
And as you can see, their 8-week schedule pretty much covered all the classics, right? You've got reading strategies, note-taking, how to give a presentation, how to use the library. I mean, it's all useful information for sure, but it's completely generic, completely disconnected from any specific major.
But then we have the second group, the experimental group, and they got something very, very different. Their entire course was designed to bridge that gap between the general skills and what they needed for their specific academic fields.
So check this out. Instead of organizing the course by skill, like week 1, reading, their course was organized by academic task type, things like descriptive essays or argumentative essays. And here's the brilliant part. This meant that an accounting student and an environmental planning student could both learn the principles of argumentative writing, but then they would go and apply it using topics and texts from their own fields. See the difference? It's huge.
So now we get to the big question, right? Especially for us as applied linguists. Which method actually worked better? Well, the researchers gathered all the data, and the results, they were remarkably, I'd even say shockingly clear.
Okay, let's just start with the dropout rate. In the traditional generic skills group, 6 students quit the course. 6! In the new discipline-specific group, only 1. I mean, right there. That alone tells you a ton about student motivation, doesn't it? But it gets even more interesting when you look at what the students who stayed in the course had to say. They were asked, how relevant was this course to your actual academic studies? And look at this. 2/3 of the students in that traditional group rated it as just average. And get this, not a single student, 0%, found it extremely useful. Ouch! Okay, now let's flip over to the experimental group. It's a complete 180, a full 100%. Every single student found the course either useful or extremely useful for their degrees. And 2/3 of them said extremely useful. The difference is just, it's stark. There's really no other word for it.
And this quote really explains why. Students can retain the new language items best when the learners are actively engaged in the learning material and have some form of personal investment in the outcome. It all boils down to personal investment. The students in that experimental group were way more motivated because they could see the immediate payoff. The stuff they were working on was going to directly help them get better grades in their real courses.
So what's the bottom line here? What can we, as current and future language educators, as applied linguists, what can we take away from this powerful little study? What are the big lessons?
Well, the takeaways are pretty clear. First, students really prefer tasks that are specific to their discipline. When you give them that autonomy, their motivation and participation just goes through the roof. It all comes down to relevance. But, and this is a major challenge, how can one EAP teacher be an expert in every single student's subject? I mean, they're not supposed to be experts in accounting and biology and IT, right?
But even with that challenge, the study's conclusion was totally unambiguous. The researchers didn't mince words. They called the experimental approach clearly superior. And what that proves is that even in a mixed general classroom, finding ways to integrate discipline-specific tasks is just way more effective than a purely generic study skills approach.
And that's the big thought I really want to leave you with today. I mean, think about it. This study is from 2001. This evidence is compelling, and it's been around for over 2 decades. So my question to you is, why is the general study skills approach still so common in our universities today? Given what we know, what are the real-world hurdles, practical, administrative, maybe even teacher training hurdles, that stop this clearly superior method from being the standard everywhere? I want you to really think about that, and we'll pick it up next time.